Hello and welcome to Easy Projects. Let's take a look at this Atten AT938 Digital soldering station. It's a 60 watt dual heating elements soldering station, and it should be able to hold the temperature within plus minus 1 degree Celsius. And it goes for $70 US. Taking a look at the base unit here, we can see the connection for the iron. There's 4 buttons and a small LCD screen. We have some venting holes on the side and the on-off button. And here on the back we can see it's an AC 220 volts and it's made in China by Atten Instruments. There's some more vent holes on the bottom and 4 screws, so we'll take it apart later and see what's inside. The soldering station comes with this stand and a little sponge. And I really like that this is separate from the base unit, so you can place this where you want on the bench and still have the base unit sitting where it's not in the way of anything. And this stand is made from cast aluminium and it really looks nice, I think. And of course we have the soldering iron itself. It is very light, and as a first impression it feels like it's decent quality. But one thing that I find a little annoying is the cable here is not very long, so you have to move the base unit a little bit around if you don't solder in the same place all the time. The cable is made of semi-soft silicone, so that's okay. And the connector is a 5-pin connector, and it of course plugs into the base unit. So all in all I think they have designed it pretty well. Let's try to turn it on and see how the user interface is. So if you turn the base on without the iron connected, it will give an error message. So you'll know that the iron is not heating. And this connector is a screw-in, screw-on type, so it sits there nice and it's not going to fall out. So the iron is heating up to the set temperature, and we can see that on the readout here. It says real over here for the actual temperature, I think. And to change the temperature I have to hold down one of these buttons here, and the number starts blinking. And it have 3 memory buttons, so if you press this just once it will go to that value, and the next one will be next value, and the last one will be the last value. But one thing that's a little annoying with this is if you don't want to use one of these preset values, you'll have to hold down the up button, and if you just release the button for a few seconds and if you accidentally press it again, it will default to that set memory of 150 degrees. And if you want to save a temperature, you can also do that. Say we want to say 175 degrees, we can hold down this button and press the number we want, and it's saved. But I think that they should have put the plus and minus buttons maybe over here, so they were separate from the memory buttons, because that's annoying when you try to set a temperature and you accidentally just press it once and it selects the saved temperature. But on the other hand, you're most likely just using one temperature 90 or 95% of the time, so you don't even touch these. I don't know about you, but that's how I use it. So I don't really often have to change the temperature. So I had this unit for about a year or something now, but I don't really use it. And there's a good reason why, so let's take a look at that. So after I had this unit for a couple of days, I noticed something, that when I turn the base unit on and it says that it have reached the set temperature, the iron is not even hot enough to melt the solder. So even though this says it's 325 degrees, the tip might only be, I don't know, around 150 or something. So that's a little crazy. But let's try that. So I'll place a piece of solder on the tip, and I will turn on the unit. And as we can see, it's set to 325 degrees. And it says that we reached that now, but it cannot melt the solder. And now starts to melt. And I mean, really, that's just not good enough. That's hopeless, because if the unit thinks the tip is 325 degrees, and if you try to solder something, it can just cool down, and the tip can even stick to the surface without this reacting, and that can't really be used for anything. Yeah, well, it works for soldering, but if you have to solder something larger, like a TO220 or something, that's actually enough to cool the tip down, and you have to sit there and wait for it to heat up again. So let's just try that same thing with my Hakko here to see that it can actually be done better. I've set it to 325 degrees. This does not have a digital readout, but this LED will stop lighting when it's heated up. So let's try that one. And now the solder starts melting, and you can see it's not even reached the 325 degrees yet. And now it's heated up. So this is more like it should be. And just another thing, when I noticed that, I started turning the soldering iron up to a higher temperature, because I thought, well, maybe that will help. But I think when I soldered some big devices, I had it at 425 degrees or something, just to get enough heat to actually melt the solder. But that resulted in the tip got deformed and all green and purple and blue. And when I took the iron apart, I could just barely get the tip off the heating element, because it was deformed, and the tip actually only lasted a couple of weeks, because the plating just got destroyed by the high temperature. So let's try to take the iron apart. And this tip holder or heat shielding thing here can be unscrewed. And now we can take the tip off. And this actually also sticks a little, because it's gotten a little deformed. Now we can unscrew this plastic nut here. Let's hope we don't break anything, because the first time I unscrewed this one, and I didn't I wasn't violent or anything, then this part of the heating element actually broke off when I unscrewed this plastic nut. I don't know if that have anything to do with me using it at 425 degrees, but I mean, if they claim it can do 450 degrees, it should not destroy itself by running it at that high temperature. You know, the tip could be destroyed, but yeah, I mean, that's acceptable, but the iron should not. That's just completely unforgivable. So as I said in the beginning, it claimed that it had a dual heating element, but I don't know what they mean by that, because there's only 2 wires going into the element, and there's this one is just a grounding spring here. So there's actually only 2 wires going out of this, so they must use this as the temperature sensor or something like that. But I don't know if they mean the element inside is split into 2, or what they mean by a dual element. But again, yeah, I don't think this is just not good enough, because it's not supposed to break when you try to take it apart. So that's it for the iron. So let's also take a look into the base unit here. It's not as heavy as the Hakko, but it's there's some weight in it, so I suspect that we'll find a rather big transformer in this. And we'll see what they use for the user interface here. I'm not sure about that, but we'll find out. And here we have it. So this is a little of a wire mess in here, sorry, but maybe we can figure out. We have the mains going through a switch and a fuse here, and there's a small resistor. And it goes into this transformer. And it looks like there's a 9.3 volt and a 28.8 volt winding on this, so I suspect they use the 9.3 volt for the control and the 28.8 for the iron itself. But we'll take a closer look at the control board. And this is the control board. I pulled out the 2 set of wires going to the transformer. This one over here was the AC 26 volts, and this one was 9 volts. So there's not much in here really, and the first thing I noticed was, I mean, these cables coming from the transformer are, you know, decent thickness, but the ones actually going off to the soldering iron are just these tiny thin wires here. I mean, it's a 60 watts at 28 watts, so that's about over 2 amps. So yeah, well, it might do. But anyways, they're using a PIC microcontroller to control the LCD and the buttons, it looks like. There's a 5 volt regulator here and some caps. We have a trim pot, and that's for calibration, I think, but I'm not sure. And we have just some diodes and some resistors, and we have this chip here from Texas Instruments, and I'll have to look that one up. Oh, that's an LM324, so I guess that's some kind of an op-amp, I think. And yes, it is a quad op-amp from Texas Instruments. and it looks like it's just a basic one with around 3 millivolts of input offset. So of course this PIC microcontroller will take care of the user interface, take input from the buttons and display the numbers on the LCD screen. And it will control the triac here and set the firing point. But one thing I'm not sure about is how they read back the temperature, because there's only 2 wires going to the iron, and we have a ground lead as well. And since this is an AC voltage and it's not a complete sine wave because it's chopped up by the triac, so they must use this as a differential amplifier in some way, and so they'll have to come up with a pretty smart idea to do this, unless there's something I don't know. Maybe they're cheating and they actually cut the power to the iron for a split second and pass a DC voltage through it and then measure the temperature, but I can only guess. I don't know too much about that. So there's not really anything on the back side except for the buttons and the LCD screen. But it looks like they have actually used a 4-layer PCB in here. I don't know if it will show up on video, but you can kinda just see the layers in the PCB material. So I actually think the internal construction of this is quite okay. There's some leftover flux on the board here and there, but except for that, it all looks like it's decent quality. Except for this connector here, I would have used a little thicker wires, I think, because I mean they're just very thin for handling those 60 watts, I think. So actually the reason I wanted to take a look at this is because, well, the iron that goes with this one is a piece of crap, and maybe I could use the iron from the Hakko, so I could buy an extra one of those and use it for this station. But I thought I could do that because this have a 5-pin connector and the Hakko has a 6-pin, so I thought they were just, you know, leaving 1 pin out on the Hakko and using the same kind of technology. But now that I see that they actually only use 2 wires for this one, I'm not sure I can do that anyway, so I guess we'll have to take a look at the Hakko also. Yeah, well, that's unfortunately not going to be that easy, because I don't know if you can see that, but they're definitely using 4 wires in this one. Well, I think I would have to investigate that a little bit further to see if that's possible, because if they use a temperature sensor in the Hakko and they just don't in the Atten soldering station, then maybe if the heating element is the same type it could still work. But if they're using 2 heating elements in this one, I don't think it's possible to do it that way. But I won't bother doing that today. So okay then, so what is the conclusion? Well, in my opinion it's not going to be good, because in my opinion the only thing a soldering iron is used to is to solder, and if the tip just cools down, well, it's not useful for anything. So I think it's a bit of a shame, because I really like this how they made the stand here, and the base unit is kind of okay, but you know, just to change, normally I use 325 degrees, so I can just program that into number 2 and press that one, and that's all fine. And if I don't want to use the iron for I don't know, 5 or 10 minutes, I can just press the this lower one and have this set to the lowest temperature. So usually it's at 150, so I can just press that and it will cool down and will not burn off the tip and all that. So I hope that I could maybe change the iron itself, but it seems like that's not very easy. And if you have to manually set a temperature here, that kind of sucks as well. They should have put 2 buttons or maybe an encoder on the side here. There's plenty of room, so they could just have done that. I know the 4-button solution is cheaper, but yeah. But I mean, the value of either an encoder or 2 extra buttons is a lot more than it would cost to actually add them. So, well, I did also like the fact that this was a screw connector instead of the Hakko is just a pressed in connector, but it's not really a problem on the Hakko, but this just looks a little more professional. But yeah, well, and what does happen the first time you take the iron apart? You just break it. That's just not acceptable either. I mean, if I dropped the iron or something and it was broken afterwards, well, that's my fault. But really, it should be taken apart and cleaned regularly anyway. So, and the way that this is constructed inside, where it's the ceramic heating element that's holding the actual PCB, well, they should have known that would eventually break if you're not extremely careful when taking it apart. But you know, I just unscrewed it and it broke, so that's not acceptable, I think. So on a 5-finger scale, how much will this one get? Well, if the base unit could be used for something else, it could get a 1. Maybe it should be this one, but I don't know. But I don't really think it's not worth the $70, you know. You could spend $100 and get something like this Hakko instead, and I have had mine for about 7 months, I think, and I'm really happy with it. You know, there's nothing fancy about it. It just works. You know, when you turn it on and you set the temperature, the iron just stays at that until you turn it off again. Well, the only bad thing to say about this is there's no way that you can actually see it's on if it's not heating, because this LED here will only turn on when it heats. And if it just stays there idle, it will only blink maybe once every 5 or 6 seconds or something. But of course there's nothing that can't be fixed, so actually, and Dave Jones from the EV blog have actually made a hack to this, so you can put a red-green LED in here so it will light up in one color when it's on and just change color when it's heating. So I think that's pretty nice, but I haven't changed it in mine because I usually remember to turn it off. So. But yeah, it's still a little annoying. They could have just put in a dual color LED in there. So would I recommend the Atten soldering station here? Well, I think you guessed it. No, I don't want to recommend it, because the whole point of buying a temperature controlled soldering station is that what it says on this display here is what's at the tip down there, and it's far from that. So I think this is actually not better than one of those $10 irons that you plug directly into the socket on the wall. But I don't know, it could be just my unit that have all these faults where the tip is cooling down and the iron is breaking, and yeah, God knows what. So if you have another opinion, then tell us about it, and you can post it down in the comments. So I am actually very disappointed with this one, and that's why I got the Hakko, of course, because when I looked at it on the internet, it looks like a really nice soldering station, but yeah, can't win every time. So thanks for watching. So if you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up, and you can subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time.